it's very interesting what you're saying about your husband and fishing and hunting and stuff. I completely agree with you. And there's another thing about masculinity as a whole that I don't think that a lot of people want to address, but it's something that's certainly large in terms of my following. Because if we break down, if anyone's watching this now and they're trying to understand why is Andrew Tate so popular? Well, I believe I speak to the base instincts of
base instincts. 100%.
Base instincts. And one of the base instincts also for men, I don't think a lot of people understand, is to a degree is peacocking and showing off to a degree. And I do that fantastically. But it is. And if you look at men of old and they used to conquer and they'd wear a feather from the man they killed or a piece of gold they stole. There was always that degree of flexing, showing off. And I think it's being unapologetically masculine and saying, yeah, I'm a big, successful man and I can afford all this stuff. And this is who I am. And I've worked my ass off and this is what I have. And I'm not sorry about it. And I'm dedicated and I'm hardworking. And no, I'm not. I don't feel like I should have to cower or hide or apologize to the world for any of these things. And I think that's the reason why a lot of men find affinity in my message. And you're right. Baseline masculinity is being attacked, and women naturally don't find it attractive to find a man who's not that way anyway. But baseline masculinity is being attacked because they want you absolutely not dependent on the government, so that the government can decide whether you eat that day. And I don't want to be a pessimist, but I still think in many ways, almost with technological advances, it's going to be very difficult to resist. I think it's actually scary. I don't know how the world's going to be in 100 years from now, but I don't know if there's going to be much freedom left. I don't know about you, but when I look at the things they're doing with CBDCs and electric cars and the way the currency is going to change, it's going to be very difficult to resist without literally starving to death. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to come. So
learn to farm.
Learn to
hunt,
that's right.
Don't let them convince you that's somehow racist and sexist and backwards and veganism. Like, you better learn to do all of those things, because
we need men now more than ever, right?
Yeah.
And also I do believe, and this is going to get me called misogynistic, but I'm going to say it anyway. I do believe we need masculinity, especially in the households, because I believe that women are more emotionally led and men are more logically led.
It's true.
And I think that the propaganda machine and the news machine primarily uses emotional arguments as opposed to logical arguments.
And women fall for the
emotional arguments. So if you have a woman who's in charge of the household and her man can't resist her commands, and they put on the news, be afraid, COVID's going to kill everybody. She gets afraid. Now you have a whole household of people with masks on, 8 vaccines, and down the insanity hole. Whereas a man with logic would sit there and do exactly what I did and say, look, all right, let's calm down for 2 minutes. Let's just wait, because the news lies. So let's just wait till Wednesday before we start taking injections. It's chill. So I think also masculinity is needed, because what they're going to do when they try and make us all slaves, they're going to use emotional arguments. And they're going to come along with, I was talking about COVID with someone the other day, and we were saying how insane it all was. And I said, imagine how insane something like COVID will be once the police force are robotic. Imagine once it's all AI, no mask, done. Like, at least in certain countries, and I know because I traveled the entire world during COVID, I'll say here publicly on the internet, I broke every single COVID rule. I broke every single lockdown restriction. I broke all of them, every single one. Never listened to any of them.
I broke more.
It's a competition.
Yeah, so if it's a competition, I broke more.
Sure?
And from day one, I was like, absolutely not. I didn't even let people that were wearing masks into my house. I was like, my baby will not look up and see somebody wearing a mask in his crib. That's scary.
Yeah.
Looking like Bane look over his crib. Like, that's just not happening.
Amazing. But yeah, I mean, me and my brother, we moved to Sweden. We resist the COVID thing from the absolute beginning. We tried our best because Sweden was completely wide open. Absolute insanity. But yeah, even the COVID thing, if you look at it, the emotional argument that was used and how they controlled the world, and they're going to use emotional arguments to control us with everything. I talk about the police force being AI. What they're going to eventually do is say, cops shoot people, humans make mistakes, cops are racist. We're going to give you robot cops that never make mistakes, because cops are racist and cops can make mistakes, but these robots never make mistakes ever. And then once all the police force are completely robotic and they've removed all our weapons, you think something like COVID 2.0 isn't coming? You think you're not going to be locked in your house? You think they're just going to let you live in peace and walk around outside? Are you an idiot? And they're going to do all of this with emotional arguments. They're not
That's why they want a matriarchy.
Absolutely, because with a matriarchy, you can affect it with emotionality. You can sit there and say, the planet is dying. Don't you care about the trees? Give us all your money. And people will sit there and go, oh, yeah, I do feel bad about the planet. Okay, it's just an extra 18% tax. And they can fall for it. So emotional arguments are how you get your way with anything. If you give me somebody, if you put somebody in front of me, I can convince with an emotional argument. I can convince them almost anything. Almost anything. Logic is much harder to do. So we need masculinity even in the household. And I'm just talking about baseline masculinity of just the logic and the rocks the rock solid self-assurance to sit there and say, no, I'm in charge of this house. Let's all just calm down. Well, let's not get emotionally led by this news channel. And let's be very smart about what we do and how we react to things. And that's why it's under attack. And I think I talk about revolutions and I talk about men being the military age males who are going to eventually stand up, etc. But I'm not be doomsdays about anything. I don't want to get arrested for any accusations. But even just having a masculine essence in a household makes the whole household harder to psyop. I truly believe that. And I can just think of COVID, and I use it as an example because it's the most recent large psyop they've attempted on us, where the amount of people I saved personally, I must have saved 200 people's lives from that vaccine. Me personally, just because me as a man, they'd come to me and go, you know, I want to travel. And I'd say, listen, I don't even have time to explain to you, but have I ever been wrong? No, don't get it. Okay. A year later, they're like, I'm so glad I didn't get that. I'm like, I told you. Like, it's amazing, like what a masculine essence can do. So that's another reason it's under attack, because if they can remove the masculine essence from society, well, now you have a society. Imagine a society where you can control purely with emotional arguments. We're almost there.
We are in a matriarchy, and this is why they accuse me of being an internalized misogynist, because I'm able to think through and acknowledge the flaws of what happens in society when women get power. And if you want to know what happens, look around you. Women fall for emotional arguments the entire time. They show us a commercial, show us. It's so sad. And before they get to the rational aspects of it, they're already invested emotionally. And I think that virtually every societal ill that we are facing today is because of women. And I think the greatest recent example of that is the Bud Light controversy, because women need to realize how backwards it is that it took men to stand up to say something was wrong when it was so obviously patently wrong. Yeah. Nobody cared for years until men stood up to it. So yeah,
completely, because it's emotional arguments. And if we also analyze, I mean, there's certain things that women can do so much better than men. I said this the other day. I was saying to my brother had his daughter here and my niece was here. And I said, isn't it amazing? I found this amazing. I said, isn't it amazing the patience a mother has with a toddler? I'm like, she's been listening to Peppa Pig for 4 hours. I would lose my mind. I couldn't do it. I simply couldn't do it. So women have this emotionality, which is so fantastic when it's properly used, when it's put into place it's supposed to be. I would never drop my child off to a daycare full of men. Would you drop your 3-year-old child to a daycare run exclusively by males?
No way.
It'd be weird. It's just something about it is weird. I wouldn't trust the men not to lose their temper with the kid. I wouldn't understand why all these men want to be around these children all day. It would be a very weird scenario. So we all understand innately our gender roles, innately on some level. So women have a fantastic superpower when it's properly used. But like everything on earth, if you have a superpower or any kind of power at all and it's put in the wrong direction, it can be destructive. Exactly. Water, if it's going through a dam, can power a city. If it's not going through a dam, it's a flood. So we have all this emotionality put in the wrong direction, and now they're in positions of power or whatever, or they're controlling the culture, or they're controlling how households are run, and they can fall for these emotional traps, these very simple, basic emotional traps. It's for grandma. The most basic, dumb level. And I sit there and say, grandma's 98. 98-year-olds die.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying she should die. I'm saying 98-year-olds get sick. Who said it was COVID? Prove it was COVID. She got the flu last year. Like, what? Have you lost your mind? But grandma.
Which is funny because I think the average life expectancy is 73. So if they've made it to 92,
they've done great.
They've done great.
Absolutely.
And I said that, and people thought that was so harsh and so mean.
Because there you go. Harsh, mean, emotionality.
Yeah.
And emotionality is used against people, which is also why they don't like stoicism. Is why when you have a man who's hard to emotionally affect, they also see him as a threat. I've had it from a lot of people. I've had some of the hate mail I've got, and I get a lot of. I probably get about 10,000 emails a day. I'd say about 9,000 of them are support and 1,000 of them are fervent weirdos. And the weirdos are like, you're a psychopath because all this is happening to you. You don't even care. It's like, they're threatened by the fact that I'm stoic. They're threatened by the fact that I won't cry and lose my mind over it. They're like, oh, he has emotional control. He's a threat, because then they can't lie to me. They can't psyop me.
Exactly.
And they want you to be emotionally incontinent. And this is another thing they're teaching men. They're teaching men to act out your feelings. So why are they doing that? Because that makes you an emotional person and you're easier to control. Exactly. They don't care that damages society by extension. Because when you tell men to act out their feelings, that's why you get school shooters. That's why you get rapists. That's why you get murderers. Why does somebody murder someone? because he's mad. He's acting out his feelings. He's not a very stoic person if he goes, I hate you, bang. Right? So they're teaching all this emotional incontinence in men, trying to pretend they care about society. It's destroying society in real time. They have no interest in actually preserving anything that's important about masculinity. And the only reason they're doing it is because that allows them to use emotional arguments. Now they can sit and say, okay, these men act out how they feel. So let's make them angry and they might riot. And let's make them riot on this street. Let's leave some bricks on this street. You understand what I'm saying? It's all absolutely utterly done on purpose. And it's kind of amazing to me that nobody sits there and understands the best way you can rebel against the slave mind and resist the matrix is just be the kind of person who uses logic, is stoic, is emotionally controlled, is physically strong because a strong body is a strong mind, who refuses to be told or labeled as something. You can't label me as a depressed person. You can't label me as some kind of disease or some kind of personality disorder. You can't label me a color. I'm Andrew Tate. This is who I am. I work hard for my last name. I understand what's right and wrong. I'm going to do my absolute best. And that alone in and of itself is an act of rebellion against.
I mean, society really started going down the drain when we started getting into mental health awareness. And this is maybe one of my most controversial viewpoints, but I say it over and over on the show. Everybody needs a therapist. They're talking about their feelings. The truth is that every feeling you have isn't valid, doesn't need to be explored. Sometimes you just have a wacky feeling and you just let it go.
Or express. We don't always have to express every single feeling that we're feeling at the moment. Sometimes it's just too much.
And because my grandfather was such an impact on my life, strongest man that I've ever known, didn't shed a tear at my grandmother's funeral. They were together from the time he was 17 years old until her dying day. I'm certain he collapsed when he got home.
Yeah, of course.
But this traditional display of masculinity, in my grandfather's perspective, that a man needs to let it die in his chest, before displaying this emotion, had an impact on me. And when I see, like, I guess to give a cultural example, someone like Prince Harry, on TV with his arms like this, breathing and showing what he learned in therapy, it makes me want to die a little. It makes me want to die a little when I see men acting like this.
Completely.
And that's controversial because they're supposed to say, oh my God, he's so brave. It's so stunning. Like, he's showing this side of him. Everything about
He's in touch with his feelings.
Harry, to me, is what a man should not be. Right?
Absolutely.
What you've done to your family, betraying your family, allowing a woman to assert that much control over you that you would, for profit, betray your family. I mean, everybody's got a family. Everybody's got family issues. Don't even let me get started. But the idea of selling out your family and then going
the royal family, selling out the royal family. And
what happened, it's such a display of what's happened to men, what's happened to masculinity. He's giving up his guns. He's never going to do this anyway. It's all of it is such a public example of what can happen.
The thing is, I know what's so interesting is I know how miserable he is.
He's miserable.
There's no way a man can be happy in that scenario because I think masculine happiness comes from strength and to a degree excellence, and also comes from respect. Men want to be respected. Exactly. And he doesn't respect himself, his family doesn't respect him, and his woman doesn't respect him. I know how unhappy he is. I know how unhappy she is by extension. It's just an unhappy, miserable house. He gave up everything and gained absolutely and utterly nothing. This whole therapy thing, the reason I believe they push therapy so heavily is because it goes into something I said a little bit earlier about selfishness. If you convince somebody that they have to spend hours and hours per week sitting in a chair talking about that feeling they had last Thursday in the kitchen.
That's crazy.
It's insane. Crazy. You want to talk about creating mental illness. There it is. This exasperates problems. This makes it worse. And it also builds this culture of absolute and utter selfishness. Excuse me, they're trying to put you in jail for the rest of your life effectively because they're going to enslave you and they're going to control all the money and they're going to make you get injections you don't need. Yeah, but I'm sad. I got therapy. I'll talk about it later. That's all they want. They just want you to be so obsessed with how you feel in your own mind that you can't even look outside of yourself and care about anything. It's part of the propaganda machine. It's part of the mechanism to turn us all into docile farm animals. I said this to somebody the other day. They were talking about how they feel. And I said, who cares how you feel? And he goes, well, what do you mean? Well, I don't care. You're telling me I know you and I don't care. So all the people who don't know you don't care. The woman you want doesn't care. You can't go up to a chick in a bar and say, you know what? Usually I'm really charming. Today I'm a bit sad. Can you give me a pass? Can you let me off? She'll be like, go away, weirdo. The chick you want doesn't care. The job you're supposed to perform at doesn't care. If the man who wants to mug you decides to pull a machete, he doesn't care. You can't say, bro, I'm not in the mood for a fight today.
I'm
tomorrow,
sad.
Please. Nobody cares. So why do you care? All the people out here in the world don't care, but you're going to sit there and you're going to care. You're the only person in the world who cares. You're going to walk around telling everybody, trying to find somebody who gives a shit. Good luck.
Kevin Samuels always used to say, and I love this saying, one of so many. He used to say, the world does not owe you understanding. And this is exactly what Andrew Tate is saying. Nobody cares. If the people around you don't care, they don't care. The world does not owe you understanding. For real.
Because what's going to happen is you're going to walk around feeling sorry for yourself, trying to find somebody who cares. You might find somebody who pretends to care long enough for you to get a little bit of dopamine. But all in all, you're wasting time in a hyper-competitive world where people like me who perform regardless of how they feel are just going to perpetually bury you. And then you're going to sit there and wake up and go, why am I a loser? Well, because when Andrew was sad, he continued to perform. When